Welcome back, and thank you for staying with KTN Prime. It's about that time where we get to feel what exactly is happening in terms of politics in the nation. What is the pulse like? And joining me for this particular discussion, to my far right, we have Odoyo Owidi, a political analyst, and next to me, Maliba Arnold, party leader, Progress Plus Alliance. Good evening, gentlemen. Karibuni sana.
Good evening. Asante.
All right. So a lot has been happening, but let's start with the latest events, and that is NCIC's push to curb inflammatory remarks in the country. Maliba, I'll start with you. Now, former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua has been summoned by the NCIC, which has raised debate in the country about the impartiality, whether, this particular authority is being used for political witch hunts. From where you sit, is NCIC impartial?
I think NCIC is actually responding because there has been, of course, public uproar.
Yeah.
But I've looked at what the Deputy President said, the former Deputy President said, or the second Deputy President said, and he's not the first person to actually run with that particular statement. I have seen other people raise similar statements, but then because of the stature he holds, he's actually been then brought into this debate. But I think eventually NCIC will actually find it to be a fair comment. He will go like any other person with just a pat on the back, because I also still feel that it falls within what I would actually consider as free speech, because context is king. There is the pre-text, the text itself, and then the post-text. If you look at it, you get the point. But the sensationalization and the politicization is done for obvious reasons.
Okay,
yeah.
So it's more of selective, because if you look at what he talked about, he started with the fact that IEBC needs to be patriotic and uphold the integrity in the 2027 election. But coming to you, Odoyo, I mean, there's a faction of politicians who are saying exactly what Maliba has talked about. But then also the argument is, was he insensitive or was he insightful? Because those are two different things.
I think the former Deputy President has left no offense uncommitted as a matter of public speaking. He has slandered people, he has defamed people, and he has incited the public. And I think some are just a matter of courtesy and respect. To go to a political rally and call the president a thief and all those many things are not necessary. And I think that incites the public into thinking the president is somebody who deserves public lynching. So when you ask if the NCIC is biased or anything, they cannot be taken as biased. In any case, they are not doing anything before. I think this is the first person they are summoning in such a long time. In the time that has passed, they have been wasting public resources. There's a lot of, in fact, leave alone public rallies. Even on social media, people who are known, people whose accounts are registered, have written things that are unacceptable in a civilized society like ours.
But is it one way? I mean, we've equally seen the same from the other side of the political divide, right?
Yes. What I'm saying is they need to pick up those people. I said we can't even talk about them being biased or unbiased, because this is number one. When you have number one, you have no number two, number three, number four to compare with. So as soon as the former Deputy President reports and is grail or right statements or whatever else, we want to see other people follow in between, so that something is happening. Otherwise, we are going to have a society, we are going to have a country that we will be unable to control.
Okay.
But you see, there's something to this that we shouldn't lose. We are speaking about inflammatory remarks that are coming as a result of something else. And methinks that is the biggest debate that we are missing out here. And he might not have used these words, but I still believe that we need to have a candid conversation about the IEBC, as has actually, the nominees as actually have been forwarded to Parliament by the President. You look at that list, it's simply made of relatives of people in power, people with deep connections with the state, relatives, cronies, people who've worked with some of these guys. Yeah. So literally, some of these people are their friends. And here you have got one player who's actually recruiting people in a competition that he will actually be competing. That's why some of us actually feel that if you look at the ground, you know that the president today shouldn't get, as in if the president is declared a winner in the elections that then come, we all must have questions because he has simply recruited his friends, cronies, business partners, relatives of some of his friends. So when you look at that particular list, it does not inspire confidence. And that is the problem that actually brought these particular issues. So a lot of us, by the way, even if the president even gets just 1 million votes in 2027, atatuambia ametoa wapi? Because literally, as in, he has no ground support. Okay. But now we see IBC, he's brought in his friends and cronies. So, as in, people must raise these issues now. If they don't raise these issues, and Kenya, for us, I think we've survived long as a republic because we air out our frustration. So sometimes we might actually feel like it's inflammatory, but that is how it bleeds out. That in and of itself, in my opinion, actually has really helped us to heal out. In times when people didn't speak a lot, we've seen consequences that were not so good. So I would rather people speak out and then bleed it out. Where it's supposed to be corrected, it's worked on, rather than try to actually push it down. Because once it explodes, we are not in a position to control.
All right, I want you to respond to that. But before we do, let's just listen to what a few members of parliament had to say in terms of the 2027 general election, which is connected to what Maliba has said.
Hakuna rais nusu-nusu. Kalia hiyo kiti vizuri. Second term utaingia. Second term utaingia rais kama stima.
Hakuna rais ameenda kwa miaka 5. Kwani huyu ndiye atakuwa wa kwanza? Kama tunafanya nini? Kama tumelala wapi? Kama nini imefanyika? Kwani Kenya ni yenu? Mjue William Ruto aende mahali.
Of Parliament, Oscar Sudi, together with William Kamket, just talking about the general election, that is the 2027. Odoyo, as you respond, I mean, Maliba talked about the fact of inspiring confidence. When you have leaders say such a thing, and then you have here a list that Kenyans feel like it's compromised, does it feel like a predetermined, election from where you sit?
You know, in this country, the rivalry in political contests is the reason why people think that when IBC commissioners are appointed during the reign of one particular president, then he has an upper hand. Even this thing that people keep saying that, oh, they are cronies, they are relatives, they are business. There's nothing, nobody has come and say, so and so is a relative of so and so in this way. I heard the other day somebody was saying that the person who was elected to be the chair of IEBC, because he comes from Turkana, he's a relative of Sijui Nanok, who works in the State House.
But he did work.
I can tell you for free that Nanok is a civil servant like any other, and he can even move from State House to Ministry of Agriculture or Ministry of Health or anywhere else. And any Kenyan who you are going to recruit to any post in this country will be related to one person or the other working in government today or in the past or in the future. But to come and say somebody is a relative of another one just because they come from the same county is to get it all wrong. If the recruitment followed the law as it is to the letter, what would happen if one day you find one commissioner is a relative of somebody who has also decided to run for some seat elsewhere? That is why in elections we have very stringent rules and regulations so that we ensure that nobody rigs the election. In fact, even a non-relative can be compromised using money or any other means to rig in favor of somebody. But look at it this way. These commissioners don't even appear at polling stations. You look at the polling station, voting takes place when all candidates have their agents present. The counting takes place when all candidates have their agents present, and it is recorded on the forms. Those forms are given to each of those agents. One is pinned on the wall, one is transmitted to IBC headquarters. At what point in time will a commissioner influence the results of an election? I think we
can
need
answer
to
that.
No, you will talk.
We can answer that.
You will only to. So I think to bring in these issues, there is nowhere you will get a Kenyan who is not related to another person who is playing politics, who is going to vie.
Really?
Yes, there's nowhere. Where are you going to get?
In a country
and
of
if
57
that is
million.
to be the case,
Okay.
we should have in the advert, if you know you are related to any politician who will vie at any given time, don't apply.
Okay, Maliba rebuttal.
A quick one. There was a list that was controversially added to it.
The 6.
The 6 names. Only one person out of the 6 or rather there was one person out of the 6.
Yes.
Remember, the other list was 100 plus.
Yeah.
Then 6 people were added, and out of those 6, one person becomes a commissioner, or rather a nominee. Well, out of the 100 plus, we get 6, and then out of 6 you get 1. You can actually see the ratio. So that whole cover of bringing in 6 people was just to give this particular person some administrative cover to come through. So be that as it may, the point is this. Commissioners are important. They are at policy level. There are a number of things that cannot happen without commissioners. That is why we say IBC is not constituted fully. So how can commissioners, of course, influence how an election turns out? But the elections are not rigged at polling stations. Realistically, by the time you are rigging at a polling station, you already lost. It's too bad. So at policy level, they're going to do policy that will actually influence how they do it. Number 2, you are going to look at how they actually allocate resources. If you are, we even have got boundaries delimitation coming in.
Yeah.
That is also a form of rigging. If you do not, we still haven't recovered from the previous one, where somebody is actually accused of having come up with a constituency that was supposed to help him win. Let's not forget that. So, delimitation level, resource allocation, civic education, and voter registration. So, as in, if you're going to rig an election, specifically how to rig an election, you rig it during registration. And there are 2 forms of registration: political party registration and voter registration. Yes. So once he tells you that commissioners are not important, they will not be down there, he's a clever man. This one is a shrewd man.
So you smell foul play?
That list, as presented, does not inspire confidence, because some of them simply are cronies. Some of them are long-serving political operatives who have got deep connections within the political space. I don't want to mention them. I have got confidence in the Constitution. I have got confidence in the people of Kenya, but I do not have confidence in that list because they are friends, relatives, cronies, business people, as in everything there is.
Okay. Yeah. It feels like you want to respond before you move on.
Let me say something about it. First of all, you need to know that when we follow the law as it is, there are certain things and that we would like also to be obeyed in the process of selecting commissioners that are not even covered in the law. Things like regional balance, community balance, and such things, they are not anywhere. So if by the time you have your list and going for interviews, you find that some sections of the country are completely left out, it is only fair that you bring any more people. In any case, when we do shortlisting, we do not only have people who are, we do not have all the people who are qualified. There are some who are qualified who are left out. So if you want to have a face of Kenya in the whole team, it is necessary that sometimes you bring in more people. And if you bring in 6 people and only 1 scrapes through, I think that is something we need to say is a good thing.
Okay.
But let's also say this. Yeah, when you say that the commissioners operate at policy level and they can influence things, those policies cannot go against the law. The law that has been put for elections will remain, and it will be used.
Okay. I know, Maliba, you want to respond to this, but even as you respond, let's just talk about the fact that on Monday, the High Court issued conservatory orders blocking the vetting of those nominees. And just today, 2 MPs went to court to try lift those orders, arguing that the court lacks authority to interfere in active parliamentary processes. So let's talk about the doctrine of separation of powers, because yes, these are 2 separate arms of government. We know that. But then at the end of the day, the judiciary is independent, and it's also tasked with upholding the Constitution and ensuring the rule of law. So then, does the argument hold water in such a case, as you respond to Odoy as well?
I think I would actually support the members of parliament who are going in.
Okay.
You cannot stop people, an arm of government, from doing what it's supposed to do unless they get to a point where you think they've actually broken the law. In any case, the judiciary is being disingenuous here because so many people went to court during, there were so many issues that people raised during the recruitment process, the selection process. Somehow, the courts ran away from actually tackling those issues, and now they want to pretend after, so that it looks like justice has been done to this particular process. There were so many cases that actually were filed against individuals, against the selection panel, against the process. All those cases somehow were set aside, or rather, there was no injunction or any order that would stop the process at that particular point. Now, way after it actually as in the process has gone. Let's just talk about the horse has actually bolted, and then now you are closing the staple. I think the judiciary here is also being disingenuous. They should stop being a stumbling block and allow these names to go through. Like I've already told you, Kenyans do not expect anything from, at least this is the first commission I've seen where Kenyans generally do not expect anything from them. The only thing Kenyans are actually saying is that we will only have trust in our votes, in ourselves, and the law. So the judiciary should stop standing in the way at this particular point to look like it's working when it became a hindrance to everybody who went to court. And there were several cases, but somehow all of them, as if in sync, were set aside. There were no orders given. Now, the judiciary all of a sudden is pretending to actually work. I think we also have got heads as a people.
But Maliba, you're the same person who's just said that if elections were to be rigged, they would be rigged from this level.
That's what I'm saying.
So how do Kenyans then believe that?
Kenyans believe in one thing. They're saying they are going to actually register in numbers as voters.
Okay.
I said I have got faith in the Kenyan people, and I have got faith in the law. But the names as they are, administratively and legally, we expect IBC is not fully constituted without these names. So that's what I'm saying, that the court had an opportunity. Kenyans gave the judiciary an opportunity to address itself to the process. So once something has actually gone, it's actually at the door, and then now you are standing in the way. By starting what you know that it's actually a war they will lose, because there is already an established practice that the judiciary cannot stop parliament from being parliament. So vetting these names and allowing them to go through, as in parliament is just being parliament and is doing its work. There is already an established precedent, not one. So that's what I'm saying. They should stop being a stumbling block and just allow the parliament to go through that process, because we know it's just a formality. Then we deal with these people who kombele kama wa Kenya.
Okay, coming to you, Odoyo, are these genuine concerns or delay tactics?
I think it's more of delay, because let me remind you something.
Sure.
Before the last general election, there was a recruitment of 4 commissioners, commonly called the Cherera 4. If you looked at those Cherera 4, one of them had worked with Joho in Mombasa. Joho then was the deputy party leader of ODM.
Cherera Pro Max.
One of them had worked with Uhuru Kenyatta in his farm. One of them had worked for Gideon Moi, and the other one was a very close relative of Peter Nyang' Nyong'o, the then also former ODM Secretary General. They were related to one side of the political divide. Nobody made noise, nobody went to court, and we let them go. And they did not do anything about the results.
But we saw what happened at the end.
Wait a minute. They were unable to succeed in any of those expected rigging of the elections. And let me tell you why the commissioners are many. So that in the event there is one among them who is related adversely to one of the candidates or the other, then the rest can always balance the equation. One person cannot tilt the scale against 6 people. So I think complaining about one person is close to the other is a futile process, because today I can be the chairman of IEBC. Then tomorrow my wife decides that she's running for a seat. What are we going to do? To stop her or fire me? So let's just be Kenyans who know we will follow the rules irrespective of who is in on that seat.
Okay. And, you know, still in the courts, IEBC just told the Supreme Court just the other day that holding the 2027 election without reviewing electoral boundaries would be unconstitutional and could invalidate the entire process. But the legal deadline for the delimitation of boundaries already lapsed. So what happens in such a case, Maliba?
I am yet to look at the reasoning. I saw that particular piece of information, but I've not looked at the thinking through that. What is actually would be informing this, we already have actually gone past the deadline. We should actually have done the review much earlier. But then, of course, law, we the people are not made for the law is made for us. So we can always get around that. But I have got this cheeky feeling that anybody who wants to force, I don't think that the country sits well at the moment. This is a personal opinion. To actually get into further polarizing, any polarizing process like boundary delimitation at this particular point. It's always a very dicey and sensitive process. Already Kenyans are very angry as it is. The country does not sit very well with anything that will be polarizing. The only reason, if somebody, having looked at that, and I think even the security people, I think the intelligence can actually advise the country that if you're going to open up this particular If you're going to, and remember, there are places where some boundaries are supposed to actually be merged. You are doing away with a constituency. We've got about 50 constituencies that do not meet the threshold. They should be done away with. So with the national temperature, you open up this. I do not think it's wise. I think generally we can find a way around that, and then we can do, again, I don't think we will have sufficient time to go through that process and still organize an election.
And by-elections.
And the by-elections that we have, it's not going to actually work well. The only reason why somebody will push for boundary delimitation at the moment will be if it's in anybody's interest to, number one, polarize the country. Number two, for commercial interests, because somehow as you go around, there's always business attached to it. But then you can also not put this past these people that we are working with. They can always find ways of doing business even in war.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good place to take a short break. We'll be back with more.